So we know that Darkseid is the super ultimate uber powerful villain of the DC universe, someone who fears nothing and no one, right? Well, no. There's someone who can make even Darkseid tremble in fear and wet his pants. Now this bad guy is none other than Darkseid's father, the sire of evil, Yuga Khan. This evil new god, and the first ruler of Apocalypse, is so powerful that the effort taken by him to open his eyes could move mountains and shock satellites from their orbits. If he did nothing but stand on a planet, he could annihilate it. In this video, we will explore everything about Yuga Khan, starting from his first appearance in the 1990 comic New Gods number 17 through 21, before exploring his other origin stories in recent times, and the various reasons why Darkseid fears Yuga Khan. Let's begin, shall we? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origin story of the first ruler of Apocalypse. In space, no one can hear you scream, no one can save you if you're lost, and no one can free you if you happen to turn into a Promethean giant, destined to live your eternal existence, chained to your own little world. For such unfortunate beings, there's no way to move and no way to live. In fact, one often loses their mind and slowly transforms into a semi-sentient being. But who really are Promethean giants? Well, they are what becomes of those who fail to breach the source wall, which keeps the mysteries of the cosmos and is considered to be the very energy that's behind the creation of all life in the universe. Once a being fails to breach the source wall and obtain the source, they are left embedded within the source wall itself, or is left to float through the depths of space while being chained to huge pieces of rocks. They live on a scale that's unimaginable to humans. For instance, a Promethean giant may take up to 1 billion years to feel a single heartbeat. The Promethean giants are very much alive, but remain shattered because they are left to cry mentally in humiliation that resulted from their failure. One such Promethean giant was Yuga Khan, the father of Darkseid, and the only being that could make Darkseid taste fear. Light years away from where Yuga Khan was floating, a Darkseid named Largand, who could feel the rumblings that are created when a god awakens from his slumber. Yuga Khan was stirring, and the same effort it took for him to open his eyes could practically move mountains on Earth and shock the moon from its orbit. That was the strength that Yuga Khan possessed. But more than strength, it tells us about his determination to free himself from his rocky prison. Gradually, Yuga Khan flexed his long dormant muscles, and unimaginable levels of power shattered the bonds that had held Yuga Khan for far too long. The mounting force coming from this Promethean giant could be felt strongly on a nearby planet of Velos. Now, Velos had an energy shield that enveloped it to protect it from all extraterrestrial invaders. The planet had sealed itself from all outside forces and remained shut out from the universe. But Velos was going to experience a disaster like no other. And remember, Yuga Khan is not completely free. At least not yet. The more Yuga Khan strained to pull free, the more the Velos' sky trembled, and although an eternity had passed since something of this sort had happened, it was the first time that Velos was experiencing an alien force affecting their world, and soon it was time. Yuga Khan had finally and inevitably broken free. Interestingly, for someone who just broke out of a prison so potent and after such a long time, Yuga Khan's reaction was not "at last," but "of course." It wasn't before long that the newly freed god headed for Velos. You may ask why Yuga Khan came to Velos, but the reason was as simple as his existence near him. The planet-destroying force that Yuga Khan brought along with him annihilated Velos. Intrigued by what was happening on Velos, Largand rushed there, only to find himself in utter shock and horror. The protective force field that had served Velos did nothing to stop Yuga Khan, but managed to stop Largand. As soon as Yuga Khan made first contact, life ceased to exist on Velos. The next few panels take place in New Genesis, where the Highfather wakes up from a nightmare. But what is New Genesis, and who is Highfather? Well, long before the existence of new gods like Highfather and Yuga Khan, the old gods used to live on a planet called Ugrund. Something mysterious split Ugrund into two opposite halves and replaced the old gods with new gods. The first one was called Galactica, which would later become New Genesis, and its residents hailed from living atoms of an old god called Baldur. On the other hand, Apocalypse was the other twin planet that was housed by the descendants of the dark old god Sorceress. The new gods of Galactica and Apocalypse found themselves in a state of eternal war, which continued when Isaiah took control of Galactica, now rechristened as New Genesis. As should be expected, Galactica was a lush green planet brimming with life and light, while Apocalypse was a dark and desolate planet currently ruled by the despot Darkseid. Coming back to the comic, Isaiah, or Highfather, the current ruler of New Genesis, wakes up from his nightmare in which he saw his long-lost wife, Avia, as she turned into a skeleton right before his eyes. Although he is horrified, each time he has the nightmare, he finds comfort in the fact that he can spend a few moments with Avia. Highfather comes out of his palace to find Commander Gideon and a few others waiting. It turns out that dark clouds were looming over New Genesis, and quite obviously this looked like the work of Darkseid and his minions. Although Commander Gideon wants to launch a full-fledged war on Apocalypse, Highfather begs to differ. He does not want to reintroduce his people to the horrors of war, but he is not a fool to ignore the threats that Darkseid poses. I do not agree with your urgency to do battle, but I respect the need to be ready for battle. Reinforce your troops. Do what you must to bring them to maximum fighting strength, but at the same time, Highfather forbids them to fire a single shot unless he gives the order. Interestingly, during the course of his conversation with Commander Gideon, Highfather mentions a figure who is a greater danger than Darkseid could ever be. Was Highfather talking about Yuga Khan? Nevertheless, the comic then takes us to Earth, where we meet Orion apprehending a bunch of criminals. Orion was the second son of Darkseid, who was actually raised by Highfather due to a peace treaty between Apocalypse and New Genesis. Naturally, Orion was on the side of good, but he had spent most of his youth trying to control his rage and anger, which he inherited from his birth father. Orion beat the criminals up pretty bad, but then realized that they did not possess even a small fraction of the power that he enjoyed, and hence, beating them up was nothing more than enjoying the violence. So, he stops and lets the police handle the situation. Along with Orion are his friends, Dave Lincoln and Lightray, who was another new god from New Genesis. The interesting thing about Orion is that he doesn't like to be called a superhero, well, because he isn't one, and he wants that everyone should see him for who he is, a god. However, humans often blur the line that separates a god from a superhero. Anyway, all of a sudden, Orion senses danger looming large over Earth, and almost immediately he could see the sky turn black, and everyone's heart was filled with sheer terror. The next few scenes take place on Apocalypse itself, where Darkseid sends a new god named Necromina to Earth so that she can raise an army of the dead using a device called Mortis Mark. The purpose of this army was to capture Orion. Necromina leaves to capture Orion, and Darkseid turns to his scientists. He orders two of them to kill each other. You want to know the reason? Well, they addressed Necromina before addressing him, which was an act of insolence that Darkseid couldn't bear, but they knew that there were worse fates than death that Darkseid could subject them to, so death was the lesser punishment. Now, Darkseid planned to kill the third scientist because he knew something that could threaten Darkseid's position on Apocalypse. Well, Darkseid had forced his people to believe that the source of their powers was technology that he alone controlled rather than the fact that they were organically and naturally powerful. He used his Omega effect to kill the last one, but it failed him for the first time in his life, and this meant only one thing. Someone more powerful than Darkseid had returned. He knew that Yuga Khan was free, and Darkseid tasted fear for the first time in his existence, and millions of light years away, Largand was covered with the last vestiges of energy that gave Velos life. He was floating through space on what remained of Velos, shouting and warning people of a simple but monumental event. Thanagarians versus Yuga Khan. Meanwhile, Necromina arrives on Earth via the Boom Tube and immediately raises an army of the dead. She knows that she cannot simply take down Orion with an outright assault, so she devises a plan, and its name is Victor Lanza. Now, Victor Lanza was a man who had a fragment of the anti-life equation in his mind. Additionally, he had once fought Darkseid himself, which made Lanza a pretty important figure in the comics, if not the most powerful. And although he doesn't live for too long in this comic, Lanza's death was erased by DC in the later part. Anyway, Lanza's son sent him to an old age home called Glen Oak, which was clearly against the old man's will. We are then taken to New York, where Highfather appears before his sons, namely Mr. Miracle or Scott Free, Lightray, and Orion. He tells them about the impending universe threatening the arrival of Yuga Khan, and how he's an evil far greater and more potent than Darkseid himself. The three sons find themselves in a state of disbelief to think of something worse than the dictator of Apocalypse, but Lightray and Orion waste no time in accepting Highfather's command to fight Yuga Khan. However, Scott Free develops doubts. He believes that it may be a test that Highfather is putting the young new gods through, and says that he would not participate in the fight. In fact, he chooses to go to his new wife, Barda. Scott Free had met Barda back in an orphanage in Apocalypse, where the two fell in love, escaped to come to Earth, and got married here. He did not wish to do anything that would pose a risk. Meanwhile, most of the action is taking place near Thanagar, the homeworld of Hawkman. During the course of his journey, Largand reaches a space station orbiting a Thanagarian outpost. However, he is overtaken by a force made up of pure evil. The naked force strikes deep into the heart of the station, and those unfortunate souls who happen to be present inside it. In a jiffy, everything gets destroyed. Back in Thanagar, there was chaos because the defense perimeter had been breached and they failed to understand who or what had attacked their energy storage pods. Poor Thanagarians were about to meet their darkest nightmare, Yuga Khan, someone whom they did not even know they should fear. Within minutes, troopers from Thanagar reached Ground Zero to find that Yuga Khan was just standing there, awaiting the arrival of his victims. One of the troopers suggested that they should capture him, and the other responded, "One that dangerous is not to be captured, open fire." Yuga Khan was being attacked left, right, and center by the best of Thanagarian weaponry. The sheer volume of the ammunition should have been enough to lay low even the mightiest of beings, but not Yuga Khan, the mightiest of the mightiest. He says, "I think the time has come to destroy these creatures." I believe for someone so powerful and evil, he speaks like a 14-year-old. The writing could have been better. Anyway, the first wave of the Thanagarian troopers lost their lives just like that. The second wave arrived almost immediately after the first, and they mistakenly believed that Largand was behind the chaos. They launch a scathing attack on him, but he saves them from the wrath of Yuga Khan. He then tells the Thanagarians everything he knows about this great evil power they were facing and what it did to the planet of Velos. Meanwhile, on Earth, a boom tube opened to let out several monitors from New Genesis under the direct order of Commander Gideon to bring back Orion to New Genesis. But Orion insists that he answers only to Highfather and no one else, not even the commander of the New Genesis forces. Yet the monitors insisted that Orion came with them, and quite naturally, a force broke out between them. They were fool enough to think that they could actually capture a god. Orion doesn't waste much time there, and flies away to his friend Dave Lincoln, who may have the answers that Orion was seeking. Lincoln tells Orion about another boom tube that was spotted near the house of Victor Lanza. Upon reaching there, they learn from Lanza's son about Lanza's new residence at Glen Oaks. Orion takes Lincoln and Lanza Jr. to Glen Oak to find that Necromina and her brood of undead are terrorizing the retirement home. She was otherwise not a match for Orion's might. Darkseid had armed her with devices that helped her overpower Orion. Seeing that his friend was in danger, Victor Lanza tried to help him, but Necromina killed him, after which the Black Racer arrived to take Lanza to the other world. Homecoming. Necromina soon arrives on Apocalypse with the prize Orion, the son of the mighty Darkseid. Her undead army was carrying Orion almost as alive as they were. She was fool enough to demand Darkseid to keep his end of the bargain. I mean, this guy killed 2 people just because they didn't address him first. What would he do to someone who tells him that he owes them something? Nevertheless, Darkseid was too occupied with the thought of Yuga Khan's return to Apocalypse, and in a moment of weakness, he granted her request for control over the dregs of Apocalypse. If you were wondering who dregs are, they are the surviving members of the race of old gods who live as lifeless beings on the surface of Apocalypse. As soon as Necromina walks out, Darkseid's main torturer and henchman, Desaad, walks in. Desaad's story is also quite an interesting one. He was born on New Genesis, the planet of the good new gods, but he was corrupted by Darkseid, who tricked Desaad into killing his own pet cat and bird. After this, Desaad became Darkseid's follower and carried out many dirty tasks for his master, so much so that he killed Darkseid's mother on Darkseid's order. Anyway, Darkseid tells Darkseid that he could smell fear, which Darkseid believed resulted in Darkseid's heart because of Yuga Khan. But Darkseid, being Darkseid, refuses to admit that he is capable of experiencing fear, and sends him to drain the life force of Orion, presumably to control him better. Hey, I don't know how that's even possible, I'm just the guy telling you what they wrote in the comic. Anyway, Orion breaks free just moments before Darkseid could begin his procedure, and defeats several of Darkseid's minions. Clearly, Orion was outnumbered, but he was far from outmatched. But Orion gets distracted for a moment when he sees a soldier named Concord, someone who Orion knew from before. He had unwittingly dropped his guard and was soon incapacitated by Darkseid's forces. Largand was following the trail of destruction that Yuga Khan left at his wake. Everywhere he went, the place became barren, as if life had never existed there. Flora or fauna, nothing survived the wrath of his terrifying god. Meanwhile, Highfather speaks to Metron and reminisces the time when Yuga Khan went to seek the source and the knowledge it hid, only to become a Promethean giant. From the very beginning, Yuga Khan believed that the objective of the new gods was to master their own destinies and to seek answers even when they were disturbing. He wished to learn everything that could be learned and master everything that could be mastered. It turns out that Highfather, Isaiah, and Yuga Khan were in fact friends. But the two had a falling out because of Yuga Khan's thirst for knowledge, which he believed was the source of all power. He launched himself past all barriers of reality and strained to reach the edge of the universe, a place where he could learn the secret of the source. But much like the others before him, he was imprisoned in a world of his own. Back on Apokolips, the Hell Pits grew brighter than ever because Darkseid had ordered the ammunition plants to work at maximum capacity, while he sat in his citadel, falsely claiming that he did not fear Yuga Khan. But all of a sudden, the fires of Armageddon, the ammunition plant, were extinguished, and it was a chilling moment even for the denizens of Apokolips who had learned to live in darkness. As Darkseid trembled in fear and panicked, Darkseid started to savor Darkseid's terror. Darkseid, while going out to face Yuga Khan, said, "I am the supreme ruler of it all. The people worship me." But Yuga Khan knocked the mighty Darkseid down and claimed, "They are going to have a new leader," and Yuga Khan proved who the real daddy of evil was. Can a son kill his father? When Darkseid set his eyes upon the father of his master, he pretty much loses his shit. Darkseid wastes no time in switching sides and offering his allegiance to Yuga Khan, but he did not want Darkseid's allegiance. Instead, he wanted Darkseid's life for killing Hegra, the wife of Yuga Khan. Darkseid has poisoned Hegra, and it was only fitting that Yuga Khan wanted his revenge. Darkseid ran away from Yuga Khan, but ended up back in Darkseid's throne room. He was perplexed as to how this happened, but Yuga Khan explained that he controlled reality. Soon enough, all of Apokolips knew about Yuga Khan's return, and Darkseid's grand statue was demolished as per Yuga Khan's first order of business. However, Orion was still unaware of what was happening inside because he was imprisoned in a room by Darkseid's minions. The next thing that Yuga Khan did was close the source, which rendered the mother boxes non-functional. He understood that it had to be Yuga Khan behind it all, but what worried him more was the disappearance of Orion, who was the only one with enough power to stop his grandfather. Meanwhile, in New Genesis, General Gideon was preparing to launch an attack on Apokolips, which was clearly against the will of Highfather, and yet the general was willing to defy Highfather, so you can actually imagine the severity of the situation. After doing Yuga Khan's bidding, Darkseid returned to him and begged for mercy. But Yuga Khan knew that Darkseid didn't have the slightest ethical encumbrances, and no matter how much vileness he denied, he would still be the one who killed Hegra. And that was it. Yuga Khan turned Darkseid into nothingness with one powerful optical energy beam. Yuga Khan now confronted his treacherous son, who had ordered Hegra's murder. But before he could finish Darkseid, he was informed of an approaching army from New Genesis. The new gods from New Genesis fought bravely against the numerous parademons of Apokolips, but just as Yuga Khan entered the battlefield, he took away the winning chances of New Genesis and crushed the entire invasion and killed Commander Gideon. Back at the Citadel, Orion managed to escape his cell and reach Darkseid, who mocks Orion for becoming so foolishly obsessed with killing him, despite seeing everything that was going on in Apokolips and knowing that Yuga Khan was a threat to the entire universe. Darkseid tells Orion that Yuga Khan needs to be stopped at all costs, or else there would be nothing left to fight for. "I only intend to conquer the universe. Yuga Khan is willing to destroy it to get what he wants. And now Yuga Khan could destroy us all by repeating history. Our only hope is if you can manage to do something impossible. However, in order to defeat Yuga Khan, Orion must do the impossible. He must kill Darkseid. Patricide. The final issue in Yuga Khan's story arc takes us to a battle sequence between Darkseid and Orion in the mind of the Lump, a being created by Granny Goodness, the owner of the orphanage in which Mr. Miracle once lived. It was created to permanently imprison Mr. Miracle, but he managed to escape, and now Darkseid used the Lump for his own nefarious purposes. In this particular instance, it was being used as something of a virtual reality console in which the father-son duo was to fight. But why? In reality, even Darkseid was constrained by certain natural laws. For instance, a son cannot kill his father. It had never been done in their existence, and Darkseid believed that Orion could do it. If yes, Darkseid could be freed of the primal forces that would prevent him from killing Yuga Khan, his father. But Orion was still confused and skeptical about the whole thing, believing that it must be a trick. But Darkseid manages to convince him. Inside the Lump's mind, Darkseid and Orion battle each other, and it soon seemed that Darkseid willingly wanted to be defeated by his son. Orion saw through his father and hurt Darkseid where it hurt the most. Orion simply walked out of the Lump, letting Darkseid live, and thereby ensuring that Yuga Khan's existence would continue to haunt the despot god. Meanwhile, in New Genesis, Highfather and Khan find themselves before each other at the Source Wall. It seems that Yuga Khan did not learn from his past mistake and wanted to get the knowledge which he had previously failed to get initially. Yuga Khan attempts to destroy the Source Wall, but fails. He then decided to convert himself into the same primal energy of which the Source Wall is made. Doing this was important because it would allow him to phase through the wall, or so he thought, but in the end, the wall befell the same fate upon Yuga Khan, and he was turned into a Promethean giant all over again. Well, so many worlds laid waste, so many lives lost, and for what? Yet another Yuga Khan story. In the 2014 comic Infinity Man and the Forever People, we get to see another Yuga Khan origin story, in which an apocalyptian named Lord Agog narrates a story about Yuga Khan to a crowd. He talks about a day that he only refers to as the final day, on which the course of the universe changed entirely. On this day, Yuga Khan's children, including Isaiah and Darkseid, mutinied against their father. It turns out that Darkseid had brought this war upon them, and although there was no need for violence, Darkseid believed it was necessary, or else he would be denied his destiny. Yuga Khan braces against his children and their combined might. He says that the anti-life resides within him, and the treacherous children would see the wrath of the universe shattering power that Yuga Khan possessed. In the comic, Isaiah is the firstborn child of Yuga Khan instead of his friend turned foe. Yuga Khan says that he would have chosen Isaiah as the successor, but Isaiah abandoned that, and clearly Yuga Khan is not happy about it. But Isaiah says the time of the old gods was over, and the universe was to be ruled by many instead of one. So this guy is willing to kill his father for the sake of democracy? That's some revolutionary. Anyway, Yuga Khan would have killed his firstborn, but Darkseid managed to kill Isaiah, but Darkseid struck his weapon into Yuga Khan from behind, killing him for good. Now, Agog claims that he is the reincarnation of Yuga Khan, and the rest of the story continues with a battle between him and the Forever People, with a special appearance from Guy Gardner, the Red Lantern. Also in the 2016 one-shot titled Justice League The Darkseid War Shazam, Yuga Khan pretends to be a god named Zonus before revealing his real identity. He was trapped in the Source Wall before the events of the comic, and wanted to use his powers of the other gods to break through it and strike a gash through the very fabric of reality. However, Shazam manages to stop Yuga Khan. Why is Darkseid afraid of Yuga Khan? Probably the primary reason why Darkseid fears Yuga Khan is that Yuga Khan cannot really be killed because he was constrained by the natural laws that prohibited him from committing patricide. Furthermore, Darkseid played an active role in the murder of Yuga Khan's wife, which was something Yuga Khan never forgave his son for. Now, someone who had the courage to try and breach the Source Wall was clearly someone quite powerful, but more importantly, Darkseid knew who he was up against. I mean, Yuga Khan could restrain Darkseid with minimal effort, and Darkseid found himself helpless. While Darkseid wanted to control the universe, Yuga Khan wanted to destroy it to get the source, so in effect, Darkseid feared losing the only thing he lived for, the universe itself. That's almost like saying Batman losing Gotham itself. What is Batman without Gotham? Well, I guess a lot of things. Anyway, Yuga Khan was potent enough to even read the Highfather's mind and project webs of energy that could restrain someone like Largand. Furthermore, Yuga Khan had the potential to render the mother boxes and all other source-based devices practically useless, which basically means that he could weaken the new gods of New Genesis. Not just that, it was his presence that rendered Darkseid's Omega Beams failed him, something that had never happened earlier. If you're still not convinced that he's uber powerful and probably the most powerful villain in DC, then hear this. He could destroy an entire planet just by standing on it, which is what he did to the planet of Velos. And being the only thing to ever leave the prison that holds Promethean giants, he's definitely a force to reckon with. He's a monster so strong that Darkseid had to seek help from Orion, someone who had dedicated his life to killing Darkseid. Marvelous verdict. So, Yuga Khan may be a multiversal villain, to say the least, and he may be someone whom even Darkseid fears, but he's more like all bronze and no brains kinda guy, and definitely not the smartest villain there is. What I mean is, this guy repeated the same mistake of trying to breach the source wall, despite knowing what happened to him the first time. Only a fool would do the same things and expect different results. Do you disagree? And if you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.